So this is okay. This is an interesting one. So Jason, do you have this clip ready, Joe?
Yeah.
Okay. From Jason Turpin, and the subject is Dutch Mantell comments on Disco. Disco, what are your thoughts on the backhanded remarks Dutch Mantell sent your way last week? After saying he liked Disco and called him entertaining, Dutch buried Disco's time in booking meetings. He insinuated Disco spent most of his time at the bar and doesn't understand how wrestling worked. I don't understand that. Like,
Right.
but bro, me and Jet, you remember TNA, right? And, there'd be the guys at the Angle,
Right.
Nash, Jeff, me, to Tanae, Don West, everything. After we're all at the bar after the show, right? So it's
Right.
like, here's the clip. So let me hear this clip. What he says about me. Starts at 45 seconds, Joe. Right?
Yeah, I got it. Oh, cool.
But Gilberti, I'll say one thing about him. He wasn't boring. He came in one day and we were frustrated. I was pissed off because the creative team, it was like, why would we do this? And why would we? Well, I don't know why we would do it. I guess because we're in a business called professional wrestling, I guess. I don't know. And then Gilbert come in one day and somebody told him, well, we're thinking about this. He said, and Dutch wants to do this. And all of a sudden he said, well, that's stupid. Oh my God, he caught me wrong. I wanted to snatch him up. And I like Glenn, but he has such a delivery. You want to kill him. So I said, why don't you go and sit your ass back in there and you come up with something, blah, blah, blah. And I kind of cussed him out. And he said, well, I didn't mean to piss you off. I said, and then I walked out. I mean, Glenn was, he was too much. But he did, a lot of people said he wasn't over in WCW. No, he wasn't over to draw money, but he was entertaining. So when you put him out there, you don't know what he's going to do. And I kind of enjoyed his matches. I enjoyed being around him, and I still talk to him every now and then. As for matches with anything that he did outside that, I would go down there to work. So most of my time was spent with creative guys. As far as going to the bars at night and messing around, I didn't do that because I didn't drink. So, you go to the bars, those guys, you might not get into 3:00 in the morning. You got to get up at 8 and go back to being creative again. Hard to go from being drunk to being creative. That's a big adjustment. But I'll say one thing about Glenn, he wasn't boring, and I liked him. And he was funny.
Speaking of
But that's not a burial.
Not really. Yeah.
No.
Here's the thing with Dutch.
No, he just said that you caught him wrong when you said something was stupid.
Here's the thing.
I like him. He had good matches.
The situation
talk to each other.
The situation he pointed at when he was talking about that specifically, like when he said he cussed me out, like I came in and like Jeff wasn't there, and he was talking about something like we have a match with so and so. I was like, well, we go, why are they wrestling? He goes, well, because bro, sometimes Jeff liked to book. It was such a crazy dynamic in that room because it was me, Jeff, Dutch, and Russo, right? And Jeff liked to book, reverse engineer the matches. He would like to book the matches and kind of like lean on Vince and Dutch to come up with angles, right? For the matches. And Vince liked to tell stories and stuff. And I was more in the, Dutch and Jeff were in that kind of camp of philosophy, and me and Vince had our camp. Which my thing is like, Dutch made this comment to me one time. Is like, wrestling is plagiarism. Like everything's been done before, and I'm like, well, that's kind of like not really creative in my opinion. I think that it has been done a lot before, but like my philosophy was like, for example, like when the babyface is in the ring, like Jimmy Hart would call out Jeff Jarrett. And just this is going to end up with Jeff Jarrett beating up Jimmy Hart. Jimmy Hart's the babyface and Jarrett's the heel because it's been done so many times. It's like everybody knows that Jimmy Hart's going to get beat up by Jeff Jarrett. It's going to make Jimmy Hart look stupid because the fans are not dumb. They've seen this angle played out a million times, right? Well, they still like to do stuff like that. And I was like, guys, I think that's dumb because the fans know what's going to happen, right? I was always like the outside the box, like let's do the opposite. And it was just hard convincing Jeff and Dutch sometimes to like do the opposite of things because they were convinced like they had their thing. But Dutch is very creative, right? Very funny. Those meetings were actually funny. Like he said, like I was funny. It's like I'd come in the room and just, sometimes when these guys would all have writer's block, I'd be the one talking about silly, throwing stuff out there. But it just keeps your mind racing, right?
Right.
Stuff and things. So, but yeah, but Dutch was Dutch and me, Dutch and Jeff and Vince were always frustrated with Jeff wanting to have to explain why the camera was in the shot in the backstage segment instead of just shooting it, right?
Right.
And Dutch could never convince Jeff to change his mind on that. And it's like, and so bro, you're kind of handicapped when you write.
And not
like
only that, it seems
like
silly telling the camera. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm
bro,
saying? Like,
look at the bloodline
putting
angle.
it over. Like, there's
look at
a
the
camera
look at the bloodline angle. Like, do you really have to explain why there's a camera in there?
Right, in
it's
a movie, does
right.
Al Pacino have to explain why
course
there's a
not.
movie there? It's so dumb.
And the fans have
Not
accepted,
dumb, but old-fashioned maybe.
And they've accepted that. Like, the camera's just there. It's like, so,
Right.
But Jeff always fight against it. But yeah, me and Dutch got along. We'd argue. Me and Jeff, they'd argue because, like, we had two different philosophies. But, like, I said, I still get along with Dutch. I've been on his show. We DM and stuff. We're cool. And he's like,
Bro,
I wouldn't even call that a burial. I think that was a pretty honest.
Yeah, that was not a burial. And
it was an honest criticism. I'll accept everything Dutch said about me there. 100%.
Yeah, and then, Dutch in Impact, when I came up with the LAX idea, I was like, this may not be an easy sell to Jeff and Dutch.
Mm-hmm.
But, bro, just to show you, and this is not to put myself over, that Dutch is so smart because he knows a good idea when he hears it.
Right.
This was not about racial anything.
Right.
And he was 100% behind it, you know, and he was helping me get all my ideas through,
Right.
So I do respect him for that. He's got a very good mind.
I learned more from Dutch and Jeff than anybody in the
Yeah.
I didn't learn, like I said, I never learned anything from Vince. Vince was just like a writer. Like, he was like, we have ideas for
now. You've been in the business a while. You'd been in the business a while, and you'd been in the booking meetings in WCW. Give me something new that you learned from Jeff that that you really didn't know before.
Where to put matches on the card, based on how a crowd is going to be up, and then like perfect example. He said like this is one of the things he always used to like tell me. He's like, why do you think WWE pay-per-view main events always start off hot? Okay, it's like they're always the first part of the match. They're boom boom. There's action, right? And he would always be like, that's because it's like it's been late in the show. The crowd's kind of like, they're tired. You got to get them back into it. You know what I'm saying? It's like just nuances like that.
And it's true because there's a pacing to the show.
Right, pacing to shows. How babyface heel dynamics.
Right.
That like how there's and stuff that you're But bro, it's just like I can't really tell you, like, because I know everything now. I just know that I learned a lot sitting in that room with those guys. No, that was a beer drinker back then. Right. But yeah, just a very wealth of knowledge. I said like I said, I wouldn't know as much about this.
What was it that Dutch came at me in some promo that he did about me?
It was that you had included him in your lawsuit against TNA.
Yeah, we did rain on that.
Right, and then he said some other that was not true, and I had to bake my boy.
Right.
But anyways, we still love you, Dutch.
Yeah. So next is from Dutch doesn't love you. He loves me. He likes me. So, right. So, but here we are years later. This is everybody's like And the thing about this, like,
bro, I don't know how anybody at our age can have still have beefs with anybody.
Well, the funniest thing about Dutch, Jeff, me, Cornette, it's like all of us that have different, Eric even, all of us that had different philosophies on wrestling,
right,
all are in agreement on the problems of the current product.
Right.
And it's like nobody wants to listen to us. They just want to listen, which is fascinating because we're like, you would think that people with that much knowledge in this business that have disagreed with each other for years all agree on one thing.
But here's the great.
It's like you would think that okay, maybe they're right,
Right.
So
and in a business perspective, I mean, all you're doing is you're getting free advice, which is going to save you a lot of money and a lot of headaches.
Right. Oh my God, this is a great one here. Niall Foster in the 70s, Vince McMahon versus New Day. K100, your boy Teddy Hart started up a podcast about 3 weeks ago. Now it's vanished from the face of the earth. Do you know anything about this? Main question, a few days ago, news came out from Sean Rossett that Vince McMahon wanted to do a New Day breakup storyline for years, yet the guys kept refusing to do this. I think Vince was right because New Day's as stale gets. What do you guys think about the fact that Vince McMahon was told no by these guys? Do you think it's affected their careers and pushes? Also, could you please cut Billy off when he starts rambling about his wrestling opinions? He's never going to stop droning on about Cody Rhodes because he's a snowflake and can't handle that you guys keep explaining how he's wrong. Get his news and cut him off. I will say this, but Billy does have the amount of time that we've invested in his rants that have turned out to be inaccurate is considerable. Would you agree with that?
Yes, that's why there is no ranting on the show.
He ranted last week. He told like long-winded stories, but whatever.
I saw that Teddy started a podcast with this guy named Rad Rob. You might remember that name,
right? I remember that.
From where?
He used to be involved in the Get My Go stuff. He was from the Rad Turtle show. He used to have.
So why would I have heard of him if I don't listen?
I'm just saying you might remember him from being mentioned on this show or being.
I don't even remember
fun
him
or whatever.
Mentioned.
But I saw that it was taken down by YouTube. They tried to put it on YouTube, and YouTube took it down. So I don't know what the reasoning was, but
well, maybe sometimes you don't even need a reason.
Teddy's a controversial guy.
I don't know about the accuracy of Vince McMahon wanting. Bro, if Vince McMahon wanted to break up New Day would have been broken up, right? You think they're going to say no to the boss when he's? I don't know. I question that story.
Though I'm going to play devil's advocate and just say this, that imagine if, maybe he went to whoever he goes into his inner circle and goes, what do you think about me breaking up, New Day? And he's like, well, they make a lot of money on merchandising more than this guy and this guy and this guy. And not only that, it may look bad that a 75-year-old billionaire is with some black guys' careers right now at this time, during George Floyd or whatever
these are always
Black Lives Matter.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. Bro, we're in a time where it's like, oh, you don't want to bring that up. It's like,
right.
Really? I mean, you don't think that may have come into the conversation? It's like, why can't? It's like you want to be able to freely talk about stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? It's like that's one thing that troubles me. So.